Well, I wanted to comment on the Molyneux controversy. Michael Dean called in on Friday and
You'll need
said
to
that
describe this Molyneux controversy.
Who is Molyneux and what is the controversy?
well, Stefan Molyneux of Free Domain Radio, and the controversy is that Michael Dean called in on Friday and said that Stefan Molyneux had used copyright takedown notices to take down the YouTube channel of someone critical of him.
Okay, so let me expound on that a little bit. In fact, Derek J., you were talking about this with Davi Barker on last night's Freedom Fiends.
Yeah, we dove deep into this topic.
And I was listening, and so anyway, what happened? Stefan Molyneux is a philosopher. He's a, I don't know how he would describe himself. He's definitely a libertarian.
He definitely uses the term philosophy.
A voluntarist, maybe.
He uses the word anarchist.
Does he use anarchist? Okay, so he's an anarchist philosopher.
Right.
He's become very popular in the last few years, becoming the claimed most popular philosophy podcast out there.
He was on iTunes the number one position in iTunes at one point.
He's been guest hosts on
had like 30 million views on videos online.
Yeah, he's a huge phenomenon. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And of course, when you become popular, you will be criticized. There will be people who have things to say that you won't like. There will be people who have legitimate critiques in some cases. And there are several critiques that have been leveled recently against Stefan Molyneux, and one of them is this copyright claim, which the story goes that there had been a critical channel with videos, excerpts essentially from Stefan Molyneux's official channel. The critical channel was using those excerpts to make certain points that they wanted to make about Stefan Molyneux, and the claim from Molyneux and his business manager is that they used copyright takedown notices through YouTube to take out the channel, which of course apparently now all the videos from that channel are now on a different channel, so it hasn't stopped the videos. It's just made Stefan Molyneux look unprincipled because he preaches the ideas of freedom.
Yeah, intellectual property must die.
He specifically speaks against intellectual property, but then here he is allegedly using intellectual property law and the threat of it to take down critics with the excuse. From what I've been told, the excuse for this was that he had to protect his listeners. The claim being that listeners had been doxxed, information had been found out about these listeners, and that that information was being posted to one of these channels. I guess there were two channels involved in the takedown.
Yeah, but now one of the channels that had all its videos taken down, all of those are now back up, and the owner of that channel has issued a challenge to all Stefan Molyneux fans to go ahead and find the part where he's been critical, or where he was threatening, or when he was
where
doxing.
the listeners were find the part where the listeners were the ones that were being threatened.
Well, Stefan,
right?
yes, that's Stefan's claim. So go find it. The videos are available.
Yes, he did say that in an interview with Joe Rogan, that where he kind of defended himself from a lot of these accusations. And I encourage the listeners to go look at that video, because he also addresses the comments about women and some of the other claims that have come up in this controversy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he did say that they were posting photos of callers' children, their home addresses, and in an attempt to threaten or
so what do you think
intimidate
about
people
this,
from
Nathan?
calling his show.
What do you think about this?
Well, I was against it, but
against what?
Well, taking down people's videos with copyright. But when he said it was because they were issuing threats, posting the pictures of their children, I don't know.
Are you a fan of?
I guess I don't
Molyneux?
endorse it. I am a fan of his, yes.
Okay, because it sounds like you might be. Look, I don't understand why he has an obligation to protect his listeners from anything. That sounds to me like it sounds a little culty.
Well, they are his revenue source.
Why are we using that term? That doesn't sound culty. That sounds like somebody who's using.
It's not my responsibility as a host of a talk show to protect my listeners.
I would agree.
If you call this show Nathan in Texas and someone finds out who you are and they make a video about Nathan in Texas, in the same way that we have, Dave in New York makes videos about us. Somebody else can make a video about him. If somebody makes a video about you and they out your identity and your home address or whatever because they've determined that from researching you and hearing you on the air and have somehow figured that out, it's none of my damn business. I'm just a host of a talk show. But we'll come back with more if you want to hang on, Nathan. It's Free Talk Live, Hour 3, coming up next. We are going to continue a discussion from the last hour just to bring you up to speed. We've got Nathan on the line. He's in Texas. The libertarian movement, for lack of a better term, has recently been all a tizzy over Stefan Molyneux. Now, this is a guy who is a very popular podcast host. He also has been known to appear on other shows like the Joe Rogan Experience, I believe is the name of that. He's filled in for Peter Schiff before. We've had him on the air on Free Talk Live as a guest co-host in the past from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. He's come on just as a guest, a regular guest, for being interviewed about a variety of things. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I know him in person. Mark, I guess his wife and your wife are good friends. I mean, so
friends, yeah.
We're close to Stefan Molyneux, which is why this is hard to see happening. All of these allegations of him and his business manager allegedly using the government copyright laws to take down a critical channel, actually 2 critical channels on YouTube. And that's not all. There was a sort of laundry list of things that have been going on. One of the concerns I've had for over the last year are the names, just the names of some of the videos he's been putting out there on YouTube. The truth about, and then fill in the blank with some famous figure or some sort of thing, some sort of event that happened. And I find that rubs me the wrong way. Someone claiming to have the truth about everything. That doesn't even seem plausible.
Come on. It's just clickbait. It's a way to get
right?
people. Yeah, people want to know the truth. And so it's
maybe that's the truth, maybe it's not. It's certainly one man's opinion.
He's offering what he thinks is the truth.
Well, if I'm going to put my opinion out there and call it the truth, that doesn't seem really honest. There was some
but they're
questionable
facts-based. It's not like
not from what I've heard. Michael Dean says he's watched some of them in their opinion.
Well, they have, he does reasonably well about sort of footnoting and referencing the things that he talks about. But I've been left with, watching some of these The Truth Ofs and been like, are you kidding me? This just doesn't seem factual to me. Looking some of it up and feeling like, well, like for instance, it was like the truth about slavery and the claim, like I watched the video and it sort of felt like what was being said was there were more Irish people enslaved in the New World than there were black people. And, that just doesn't sound right to me. And I need a lot. That's just stunning to me to hear something like that.
The other long-running concern with Stefan and the reason why people accuse him of being a cult leader is this whole defooing thing.
This is
a term.
family of origin.
Right. This is this like sort of term. Cults tend to have
so do the libertarian
terms.
movement. I wish
Jargon,
you'd stop
using
this cult term because it is tossing it out irresponsibly.
Why is it irresponsible? This is a critique that has been leveled at Stefan Molyneux. It has been leveled for a long time, and there are reasons why it has been leveled. One of the most common things that you see in cults is the idea of the cult members being encouraged to remove all connection with family and friends and envelop themselves entirely in the cult.
Okay,
now,
right,
I'm not saying he's a cult leader.
He doesn't
That's just
do
what
that.
he's
Yeah, nor does he advocate for that. He advocates for therapy.
And he will say that you should do away with your family of origin if it's damaging or things like that. And I think that sometimes his message will feel like you just need to look. If your family doesn't agree with you politically, on the ideas of liberty, that you need to let him go.
So you're saying that's not what he says?
I think that it is not.
Let's bring Nathan on the line here. He's the guy who actually listens regularly to Stefan Molyneux. Is that what he says about leaving your family of origin, or what are the parameters normally when that advice is given?
Oh, well, it's funny you bring that up. In the Joe Rogan interview I referenced, Joe Rogan actually plays a clip of him where he appears to be saying that if your family is a bunch of statists, then you should leave them. And then he kind of argued about, well, that's not really what I was saying. And I mean,
what was he saying?
It's not. He was making a factual statement saying that if you have principles that clash with someone else's, eventually you're either going to have to stick to your principles or abandon them. And that's what he's saying.
The clip made it seem like what Mark was saying, though, that if you have status, you should cut them out of your life. And so to answer the question about the defooing, he does recommend therapy. He does say that if you're gonna separate from your family or your wife or your child or whatever, you should seek therapy. Have professional help when you're doing this, and to think over it carefully before you do it. But Yes, he does definitely recommend this procedure that if your family, has abused you in the past, for example, and they refuse to apologize or they refuse to recognize that there's anything wrong, then yeah, then you can, if that's what you want to do, you can
So
go
just
ahead
to be
and cut them
clear
out of your
on what
life.
you're saying, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you, Nathan. So you're saying that if you've been physically abused, he recommends disconnecting, but not if your family believes in the state.
I don't think so, but
No,
again,
he doesn't make that distinction.
I haven't seen that exact video that Joe Rogan played, so I don't know if he did qualify it before the way he
I'm
said.
only asking. I'm not asking you about the one Joe Rogan video. I mean, you said you were a fan of Stefan Molyneux, so I'm presuming you've heard him address this issue over time.
I've heard it,
right, but
and
I
don't know why
it doesn't come up that much.
Okay, right. I've heard him talk about this stuff, and I've heard him make statements that sound for all the world like, if your parents don't believe like you, then you should get rid of them. But at the same time, when pressed on this issue, he'll clarify that what he means when somebody's status, the like ultra status, the sir, yes, sir, father, I'll do the dishes now, sir. Like this kind of sort of ongoing abuse. And, for Stefan, he's very clear that, that it's not just one's political beliefs that we're talking about, not even moral beliefs, just beliefs. These things reflect on your daily life. If you believe that it is acceptable to bomb people around the world in order to get what you want, you're going to be an a-hole in your, in your life. And this is going to show itself in some way. And if your dad or your mom is a flaming a-hole, then perhaps you shouldn't subject yourself to flaming a-holes. And now that is reasonable. However, when he gets and he does his stuff and he gets into his shorthand, he'll just say, defooing your family of origin, like get rid of them, that kind of thing, and he'll shorthand in a way.
Because what I've understood, and again, I'm not a listener regularly of Stefan. I'll hear him every now and then, just by chance or see something online or whatever. But the narrative I've heard from some of the critics, and what you're saying to me is this isn't true. What I'm hearing from all three of you. Is this isn't true. But the narrative I've heard is that he has this thing called the against me argument, where he will will ask, he encourages people, and it's a smart argument. I like it. He'll encourage people to ask somebody, hey, when you support the government in its war on drugs, you're actually again, that's going to work against me because I smoke pot, and that means that I would end up going into a jail cell if this war on drugs were to catch up to me. Does that mean that you support? Are you against me, basically? By your support of the war on drugs, I'm doing a poor job of this, but by your support of the war on drugs, you therefore support putting me in a jail cell. Is that right? Basically cornering somebody into saying, why, yes, I do. And then he would suggest, the critics are saying, that he would suggest that anybody that does support the government in acting against you is someone you should cut out of your life.
And I think you should consider doing that. If somebody says that you should go to jail for the way you act, that person perhaps is not the best person to be around.
So you're saying I should cut my mother out of my life?
Does she think you should go to jail?
Absolutely. I had a conversation with her about the war on drugs. I didn't ask her against me because I didn't tell my mom.
Well, that's a very important distinction that is made. Specifically, it's about against.
She supports putting everybody else in jail.
Me.
So why wouldn't she support that?
That is against anyone, everyone else, not against you. That's a distinction, and it's an important one.
If a husband was beating his wife, no one would be saying, well, of course she shouldn't leave. They're family. They're married now. They say this is a voluntary relationship. She opted into it. She can opt out of it. And as adults, even as adult children, we can talk to our parents and say, hey, this is a voluntary relationship. See ya.
Oh, absolutely.
Molyneux does bring that point up a lot.
We'll come back with more here. I'm not saying there aren't reasons why you shouldn't cut off your family from contact, but some people are suggesting that maybe you should let it go for more than one conversation. We'll come back with more here in moments. It's Free Talk Live. As we continue with Nathan in Texas, he brought up this controversy surrounding Stefan Molyneux, and there are several different aspects to it. We've only covered a couple of them so far. Some are saying that his message is that people should cut off their family after one conversation, but Derek J. and Mark, you're saying that's not the case, that he's saying that the only time you should cut off your family, or defoo, which is sort of the jargon that that is used in the Molyneux podcasts, is only after multiple iterations of conversation, after you've not made any progress or something like that. And apparently there's some horror stories out there of people who have cut off all of their friends and their family because I guess, most people in our lives don't agree. I mean, unless you're in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, where you literally can be surrounded by like-minded, liberty-minded people as much as you would like to be. In most of our regular lives outside of New Hampshire, we weren't surrounded by liberty-minded people. And so, the idea that cutting all of your friends and family off if they don't agree with you politically could be a really dangerous idea. But you're saying that's not what he's saying, guys. Is that
no,
right?
he advocates for people having conversations with their friends and family, multiple long conversations, in depth, and therapy. If you're even considering defooing, he says don't do it without consulting a therapist.
Let's go back to Nathan. He's in Texas. Nathan, there was also some allegations about a lie that was told, and we haven't really gotten into this on the air. But you had called up, Nathan. You had said that Stefan Molyneux, who's this internet philosopher who's made it big, he's got millions of views on his videos and things like that. There's been some critique around him recently, and that he went on the Joe Rogan show and he answered some of these critiques. And Derek J., you said you had that he told a lie, that you actually checked into this and you can verify that that was not true.
Yeah, I don't know if
about?
Nathan looked into this, but one of the first.
I haven't seen the reprint or the copy of the True Sheaves channel. I was going to check that out after the show.
Yeah, you'll have to look at that because that's the channel that got shut down because of Stefan Molyneux. And in the interview with Joe Rogan, most recently on the 23rd, just I think 2 days, or on the 21st, he explains that his wife had never been
who is a therapist.
His wife, who is a therapist, has never been convicted of that which was alleged, that she had suggested defooing without a therapist. Leaving a family, right?
So whether she did or not, but I remember her getting some kind of, chastening from the organization she was licensed by, or people that she worked with, or something like that. And
right.
Yeah.
In the
I
video,
hope you misinterpreted this.
In the video, Molyneux said she wasn't. She didn't have her license suspended, I believe. Is that not correct?
He says that she was never that she was never convicted, that she was found innocent of all the charges that were alleged against her, and that's not true. The 2012 document that True Shibes put online, and anyone can look at for themselves, shows that the allegations against her, that they found it was not within the medical practices recommended teaching to defoo. And that she had been reprimanded, that she had been convicted of these alleged charges. And he said that she hadn't. That sounds like a lie.
And I do feel like they went after him, and that they were really, and her, like went after her.
They being the board of whatever.
The board.
The licensing
that
board.
was the impression I got all along. But, you never know with these. Whenever you get a license, you're just opening yourself up to the government doing whatever they want.
Well, and this really hurt me because I'm a fan of Stefan Molyneux. I've been following him probably since 2009, and he was integral to my conversion into realizing I was an anarchist and a philosophy. So to hear something that I perceived as a lie was a real hard hit. To be like, wait a minute, did he just say something that's not true and I can go verify it for myself? Yikes.
For me, the final straw was, having heard all this stuff about these people leaving their families and him claiming to have the truth about things, that wasn't enough to make me want to remove him from LRN.FM. But when I heard the story, or when I saw the clip about some of his comments about women, were very dismissive and seemed unfair. Basically, the video I saw was him blaming women for men being a-holes, essentially, that it was all women's fault because
pick better men.
Well, yeah, because he says that women are the disposers, that men propose and women dispose, that men are the ones who ask for dates and women are the ones who have all these choices that they get to choose from, and they're choosing the a-holes.
Right, so therefore it's all women's fault that a-holes continue because they keep seeing them and dating them and having sex with them and things like that. And it just seemed really offensive to me.
Why not have a little bit of self-knowledge and realize that there's some biological part of you that is going to seek an alpha male if you're a woman, and that's not always the best, healthiest choice. That sometimes you have to override your internal biology and say, hey, my brain knows what's best?
Some of the stuff that I've seen, and I've seen very little on this because I don't watch Stefan's stuff like I did. There was a time when I watched and listened more, but when the generalizations are laid out, that's when you're going to have problems.
That's what made me uncomfortable about that.
I don't know.
And then I heard about these copyright takedowns. So I'd actually pulled him off the air on LRN.
I had nothing to do with that decision.
But how
you
long?
Don't program LRN.
How long can you talk in specifics? It helps after 3,000 podcasts to have some generalities or some shortcuts of explaining something. So yeah, like you say, Mark, you're going to have complications when you start generalizing. But he's got to at some point.
Yeah.
So, and then I heard about these copyright takedowns, which were really disturbing to me, and those haven't been resolved in any way, shape, or form that I can tell. So, Nathan, how do you feel about all this?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the copyright thing again, because I wanted to say that I don't approve of that, and Davi actually came up with a great idea that doesn't involve any force.
Was this last night on the Freedom Fiends?
Indeed.
Yeah, maybe we can hear that suggestion. I'm sure Derek can give us a recap. Thanks, Nathan, for your call tonight. How can Stefan Molyneux, who's stepped in it big time with this copyright takedown, how can he make right? Because that channel's down. I don't think he can just send a letter to YouTube and have them flip it back on again. I mean, these guys don't have great customer service. More coming up. Internet philosopher Stefan Molyneux has been under fire recently by people within the Liberty Movement and outside of the Liberty Movement for some controversial things that he allegedly says on his podcast and video series. And if you'd like to comment, would love to hear from you. Maybe you're someone who has disconnected from your family of origin, and it went well for you. Things are just going swimmingly great. Or maybe your life took a real bad turn after that. Apparently, some people have taken Stefan Molyneux's suggestion and have disconnected themselves from their family and friends because of political differences, or at least they interpreted his suggestion in that way, even if it wasn't actually his suggestion. And how did that work out for you? So whichever side of the Stefan Molyneux conflict you're on, would love to hear from you if you feel like it. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. And then coming up, we'll get to the teacher who allegedly had sex with a teenager. And Derek J. will give us Davi Barker's suggestion, the Muslim agorist, his suggestion for how Stefan Molyneux can try to make some of this stuff right. Derek J., you were co-hosting the Freedom Fiends last night, freedomfiends.com. And let's see, you were on with Davi Barker. You guys hit this issue with Stefan Molyneux, the internet philosopher, who's under fire right now from various different sources. Hit this pretty hard last night. One of the biggest controversial and most obviously wrong things I think that has happened here is that his business manager, and as was pointed out, they work very closely with one another, so it wasn't like his business manager did this without Stefan's approval or knowledge, but his business manager apparently had YouTube pulled down some channels that were critical of Stefan Molyneux under the excuse that they were doing it to try to protect their listeners who are allegedly being doxxed and harassed by those channels. There has been a challenge presented by one of the channel owners to say, prove it. Prove the claim that there was any harassment going on. Here's all the videos. They've been re-uploaded to another channel. Show me where this has happened. As I pointed out, even if it did happen, it's not my job as a talk show host to protect my listeners. That's another story. It's clear that a lot of people are upset about this because Stefan Molyneux is supposedly anti-intellectual property. Ostensibly, he's told people, hey, use my videos, make stuff out of them, right? And now somebody did that. And he didn't like what the content was, so now that channel was used, the copyright notice was used as an excuse to take that down. So they allegedly used intellectual property protections offered by the government in order to inflict harm upon a critic. And so what was the proposal to try to make good for that situation? Because that channel's still down. The True Shibes channel on YouTube, it's down. And so, with the company the size of YouTube, you can't just send those guys an email and say, hey, I made a mistake on this whole DMCA takedown notice. Can you just go ahead and rescind that? I don't imagine that's something that's too easy to do.
I don't know. They do send you emails when you submit a takedown notice and when you're on the receiving end. So you do get some sort of email communication with YouTube when that happens.
It's typically automated, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I've been on the receiving end of these, and I've also been able to email back to YouTube and say, like, hey, look into this. There was no bullying going on in these videos. But Davi's recommendation, I think, is a good one. And he said to make whole, True Shibes, the YouTube channel that was originally the critic here and had their YouTube channel taken down, to make him or her whole, the correct solution, or one, would be for Stefan to go onto the YouTube channel, that one only, and do a live call-in, criticize me, ask questions of me sort of presentation. That way, it brings the viewers that True Shibes lost back to that channel. You know, Stefan is bringing all of this attention and subscriber base to the new channel. And instead of being in the position of power, the throne that has the mute button or ends the call, instead, he would be in the hot seat, and he would be taking questions, would not have the ability to mute callers, and would have to answer those questions and be held to account.
So is that doable? Like, I've never done... You do the live YouTubes
that can be done
on Peace News Now at derekj.me.
Yes.
So whoever owns this new channel wouldn't have to give Stefan their login information to have him run a show on their own channel?
No, it's my understanding you can give other Google Plus accounts access. So, like, we have an activist channel here in Keene where several different users can share login info to the same YouTube channel, even though they're all have different sign-ins. So,
or maybe
Stefan
what they
could be doing that.
Or maybe what they could do, instead of giving Stefan their login info, maybe they could just create this show like you do with Peace News Now, and like have a Google Hangout, bring Stefan into the Hangout. That way he's just on their show as their kind of featured guy.
Sure, there are lots of solutions, but the crux of it is that Stefan needs to answer to these criticisms publicly. Uncensored on someone else's channel, so that it looks, you know, it's not like, oh, hey, he put out this piece and he's trying to cover himself here. This is like,
and he won't benefit from the views.
Yeah, I'm submitting, I'm being humble, and I'm going to bring you the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's what I feel the central point of the complaints about Stefan isn't the things that he's done or said on the air. It's sort of who he is. He presents himself as he calls the show a philosophical conversation, the most important the most popular philosophical conversation on the internet. But I often feel like it's not a conversation, it's what Stefan thinks. And that, I think, is what rubs people the wrong way in many cases, is that Stefan is one of these people, and I think like me, that just thinks they're right all the time.
Didn't he say that the liberty movement would be set back like 2,500 years if it weren't for his show?
I don't know that he said that, but it is a pretty audacious thing to say. Yeah. I say audacious things about Free Talk Live, like Free Talk Live.
But I'm here to call you out on those things. I think that's where you know, the difference between a show like ours and a show like Alex Jones or Stefan Molyneux, which maybe it wasn't their intention, but over time seems to create this cult of personality. Where,
well, they end up being the preacher as opposed to, you know, a member of, you know, sort of the congregation having a discussion. They end up being the central person handing down truth. And that's always wrought with problems.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.